There comes a moment in life when the noise fades, and all that remains is a whisper inside you, a question, persistent and piercing. Is this all I was meant to be? We scroll through perfect pictures, listen to highlight reels, and somewhere along the way we confuse survival with success, comfort with growth. We begin to wear invisible chains, chains made of fear, doubt, guilt, and expectations. And worst of all, we learn to live with them. But my dear brothers and sisters, life was never meant to be lived in silent suffocation. You weren't created to simply exist. You were designed to rise, to reflect divine light, and to walk a path of purpose, no matter how crooked your beginnings may be. I remember once sitting alone, questioning my worth, feeling like I had given so much but gained so little. The walls around me weren't physical, but they were real. Anxiety, self-blame, spiritual fatigue. Then I heard something simple yet profound. Remove this block, not the one outside you, but the one within you. That moment changed me. Because the truth is, the greatest prison we face is not the world around us. It's the limits we've placed in our minds and hearts. The things we've accepted as permanent when they were only meant to be lessons. As you listen today, I want you to see yourself in this journey, not as someone broken or behind, but as someone becoming. I want to take you through the valleys and mountaintops of real struggle and real faith. We'll talk about the masks we wear, the chains we don't see, and the incredible strength that comes when we reconnect with the one who created us for more. And by the end, I pray you don't just walk away with motivation. I pray you walk away with movement, a stirring in your soul to remove what's been holding you back, and to walk perhaps for the first time in the direction of your true potential. Because it's there. It always has been. And now it's time to unlock it. We live in a world where chains don't always clank. They don't always rattle. Sometimes they're quiet, silent, invisible, and yet they weigh heavier than any iron man has ever forged. These chains are not tied to our wrists or ankles, but to our thoughts, our fears, and our deepest insecurities. They wrap around the soul, pressing down until we forget that we were ever meant to fly. Many of us walk through life convinced we are free, but in truth we are only navigating within the limits we've accepted as unchangeable. Every human being carries something, a story, a scar, a burden. For some, it's the voice of a parent who never believed in them, echoing through adulthood. For others, it's the shadow of a past mistake they've convinced themselves they can never outgrow. And then there are those who carry quiet shame of not being enough, not having achieved enough, not living up to an image they've built in their minds or that society has imposed upon them. These thoughts don't just affect how we feel, they shape how we live. We take fewer risks, we dream smaller dreams, we seek less joy because we secretly believe we don't deserve it. The most dangerous thing about these invisible chains is how easy it is to normalize them. We start to call them personality traits, or just the way I am. We label ourselves, I'm not confident, I'm not smart enough, I'm just unlucky. We speak as if these limitations are etched into our DNA. In doing so, we forget that we are the ones feeding the narrative. The chains grow tighter not because someone is pulling them, but because we keep holding on. From childhood, many of us are taught what to think, not how to think. We're told what success looks like, what failure feels like, and who gets to belong where. A child full of imagination, faith, and freedom slowly begins to adapt to a world that praises conformity and punishes difference. That same child, now an adult, may wear the outer garments of responsibility and success, but may still be shackled within, questioning their worth and unsure how to break free. That's the internal conflict many people live with silently. Even faith, if misunderstood or misapplied, can become a source of guilt rather than growth. People mistake religiosity for rigidity, and instead of allowing their spirituality to uplift and liberate them, they let it become another weight they carry, believing that past sins make them unworthy of mercy, or that divine love must be earned through constant perfection. But the truth is, many of these beliefs are blocks we have built ourselves. We've confused conviction with condemnation. We've confused humility with helplessness. We also allow the expectations of others to become our personal prison. A comment made in passing, a failure that became public, or the fear of disappointing loved ones. All of these can grow roots within us. Without realizing it, we begin making choices based not on what is right for our souls, but on what is safe for our image. We lose our authenticity, trying to meet a standard that was never meant for us in the first place. We fear judgment more than we fear stagnation, so we shrink, we delay, and we make excuses for staying exactly where we are. And the most deceptive thing, these chains don't always hurt. In fact, sometimes they feel comfortable, predictable, safe, like staying in a dim room long enough that the darkness starts to feel like home. Growth demands discomfort. Freedom often comes wrapped in fear. And so many people choose the familiar pain of limitation over the unknown beauty of liberation. Everywhere we turn, we are bombarded with images of what a perfect life should look like. It's in the filtered photos on social media, the curated moments of happiness, the constant showcasing of success, wealth, beauty, and achievement. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that there is a singular definition of success, a checklist that once completed will supposedly bring happiness and fulfillment. Get the degree, get the job, get married, buy the house, have the children, retire comfortably. This narrative is drilled into us so deeply that most people never stop to ask, whose version of life am I really living? The illusion of the perfect life is dangerous because it plants the seeds of comparison in the soil of insecurity. It tells you that if your life doesn't look a certain way by a certain age, then you must be falling behind. It convinces you that happiness is something to be chased externally, rather than something cultivated internally.
And so people begin to live for the image instead of the essence. They smile in photos while suffering in silence. They appear successful on the outside, but feel completely lost on the inside, because they've built a life based on what they were told to value, not what truly matters to their soul. The pressure to conform to this illusion creates internal conflict. A person might be deeply passionate about teaching, but choose a more prestigious career because that's what society celebrates. A woman might be single and content, but feel pressured to marry quickly because everyone around her sees marriage as the ultimate sign of success. A man may quietly struggle with financial pressure, yet pretend to be thriving because admitting hardship would be seen as failure. These are not just personal dilemmas, they are reflections of a society obsessed with appearances over authenticity. What often goes unseen is the toll this takes on mental and emotional health. The more we try to meet these artificial standards, the more disconnected we become from our true selves. We start silencing the parts of us that don't fit the mold. We suppress our dreams because they seem too unconventional. We ignore our pain because vulnerability isn't part of the highlight reel. And in doing so, we drift further from our purpose, caught in the trap of pleasing a world that doesn't even truly see us. This illusion also creates a false sense of failure. People begin to believe that if they haven't made it by a certain time, then they never will. But the truth is, real growth is not linear. Real fulfillment doesn't follow a fixed timeline. Some of the most remarkable stories began after failure, heartbreak, or what seemed like dead ends. Yet these stories often go untold because they don't fit the neat, polished image that we've been conditioned to chase. The result is a culture of silence, where people suffer in the shadows of their unmet expectations, all while pretending everything is fine. And perhaps one of the most harmful effects of this illusion is how it blinds us to our own blessings. In constantly comparing our journey to others, we overlook the grace in our own lives. We forget that peace, gratitude, and connection are not lesser achievements. They are profound victories of the heart. But because they can't be captured in a photo or measured by likes, they are often dismissed as insignificant. People chase louder lives instead of meaningful ones, mistaking applause for purpose and attention for love. This chase never ends. No matter how much a person acquires or accomplishes, there will always be someone doing more, having more, appearing more. And unless we pause to redefine what success truly means to us at the soul level, we risk building a life that looks good on the outside but feels empty within. Faith is more than rituals and words. It is a fire that fuels transformation, a light that cuts through the fog of confusion, pain, and doubt. In moments when life feels heavy and directionless, faith becomes the compass pointing us back to meaning. It is not about perfection or having every answer. Rather, it's about trust, trusting that your journey, no matter how messy, has purpose, that you are seen, heard, and known by the one who created you, even when the world overlooks you completely. Faith gives us the courage to believe in a future we cannot see, and the strength to keep walking even when the road disappears beneath our feet. Many people misunderstand faith. They see it as a label, something to wear or defend, rather than something to live. But real faith is deeply personal. It grows through struggle, through those quiet aching nights when no one knows what you're going through. It's shaped in moments of surrender, when you've tried everything else, when nothing seems to work, and you fall to your knees not out of weakness, but because your heart finally opens wide enough to let the light in. In those moments, faith is not abstract. It is real, raw, and alive. Personal reflection is essential to this process. It's easy to move through life on autopilot, checking boxes and fulfilling obligations without ever stopping to ask, who am I becoming? What is my heart truly craving? Where is my soul in all of this? When we take the time to pause, breathe, and ask these deeper questions, faith becomes our mirror. It shows us what we've been ignoring. It brings to light the wounds we've buried and the healing we've delayed. This self-awareness is not always comfortable, but it is where transformation begins. Faith teaches us that we are not defined by our worst moments, that no matter how far we've strayed or how broken we feel, there is always a way back. This message is especially powerful in a world that often defines people by their failures. Society remembers mistakes but forgets mercy. It cancels people instead of understanding them. But faith introduces us to divine forgiveness, a mercy so vast that it not only erases sin but also transforms the sinner. This mercy gives birth to hope, and from hope, new action becomes possible. There is something extraordinary that happens when a person allows faith to become more than a ritual. They begin to carry themselves differently. They speak with more compassion, more truth. They become more honest with themselves and with others. They stop chasing empty things and start investing in things that matter. Kindness, sincerity, prayer, service, humility. They are no longer defined by how the world sees them, but by how close they are to the Creator. And that internal connection gives them a peace that cannot be faked or stolen. Faith also teaches us about timing. In our culture of instant gratification, we often grow impatient with the process of growth. We want results now. We want healing now. But real change doesn't happen in haste. It happens in seasons. Just like seeds grow underground before breaking the surface, the changes faith brings often begin invisibly, quietly, in the unseen spaces of the heart. It may look like nothing is happening, but deep down a new foundation is being built, one that cannot be shaken by external storms. When everything else collapses, when people leave, plans fail, and certainty disappears, faith remains. It becomes the shelter in chaos, the anchor in loss, the steady hand guiding us when our own strength has run dry. It doesn't make life easier, but it makes it more meaningful. It infuses even the most painful moments with the possibility of redemption, reminding us that there is a wisdom greater than our understanding, and that our struggles are not in vain. Life doesn't change all at once. It rarely flips like a switch. Instead, it shifts, slowly, subtly, and often quietly. when a person begins to challenge the story they've been telling themselves. For years, someone might believe they're not capable, not worthy, not ready. These narratives don't usually scream, they whisper. And the longer we listen, the more we believe them. But change begins when we question those whispers. When we say, what if I've been wrong about myself? That single question is a crack in the wall, a shift in the narrative, and it has the power to rewrite an entire life. It's not always grand gestures or huge leaps that unlock potential. Most of the time, it's small acts of courage, repeated over and over again. It's speaking up when your voice shakes. It's showing up when your heart isn't sure. It's choosing to be honest when lying would be easier. These small acts, insignificant on their own, begin to stack up. They create momentum. They signal to the soul that you're no longer willing to live in fear or under labels that don't belong to you. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you take back a piece of yourself. Consistency is often overlooked in a world that celebrates overnight success. People want breakthroughs without the process, results without the routine. But real, lasting transformation is born in repetition. Waking up and choosing better thoughts, better actions, better environments. It doesn't matter if it's slow. It matters that it's happening. One step forward, even if it's shaky, is still movement. A person who falls 7 times and gets up 8 is already shifting the narrative of defeat into one of resilience. One of the most powerful tools in changing your story is the ability to separate who you were from who you're becoming. Too often, people remain stuck because they keep dragging the past into the present. They replay old failures, past relationships, moments of shame, and they use them as evidence that they are not capable of change. But the truth is, the past is a teacher, not a sentence. It is there to guide you, not to define you. When you begin to see every wound as a lesson, every setback as training, you stop being a victim of your past and start becoming the author of your future. It takes humility to admit you've been living beneath your potential. It takes strength to confront the parts of you that have been in hiding. But that confrontation is where freedom begins. It's in the decision to face the truth, not run from it. To say, yes, I was afraid. Yes, I failed. But I am still here, and I'm willing to try again. That moment, raw, honest, uncomfortable, is when your story starts to change. Not because everything outside you shifts, but because you shift. You begin to see possibility where before there was only limitation. Changing the narrative also means learning to see yourself through the lens of mercy and growth, not criticism and shame. So many people never grow because they're too busy punishing themselves for where they are. They think they need to fix everything before they can begin again. But healing doesn't come from harshness. It comes from kindness. It comes from giving yourself permission to grow slowly, imperfectly, and in your own time. You don't need to be at the finish line to be proud of yourself. You just need to be moving in the right direction. And in this movement, however small, it's important to surround yourself with people and environments that reinforce the new story you're trying to live. Growth is difficult when you're constantly reminded of the person you're trying not to be. Sometimes changing the narrative means creating distance from old influences, breaking patterns that are familiar but harmful, and allowing yourself the space to become someone new. When a person begins to break free from the limits they once believed were permanent, something extraordinary happens, not just within them but around them. There's a quiet power in becoming someone who has walked through struggle, faced their fears, and found meaning in the process. That power is not loud or boastful. It's steady, sincere, and deeply inspiring. Such a person doesn't need to preach with words because their life itself becomes a message. Every action, every interaction, every choice begins to reflect the light they've uncovered within themselves. And through that light, they unknowingly give others permission to do the same. We often underestimate how much our own growth impacts the people around us. A mother who chooses to heal her trauma teaches her children emotional strength without ever saying a word. A young man who walks away from toxic habits silently challenges his peers to rethink their own path. A student who dares to follow a passion, even when it defies expectation, opens the door for others to believe they can do the same. These quiet revolutions don't make headlines, but they change hearts. And when you begin to live with purpose, you start to ignite purpose in others without even trying. Becoming the light doesn't mean having all the answers or being perfect. It means being honest, being compassionate, being present. It means choosing to uplift rather than tear down, to listen rather than judge, to understand rather than assume. In a world where people are often dismissed, criticized, and silenced, simply being someone who sees others clearly and kindly is a radical act. It shifts the energy in a room. It creates safety where there was fear. It makes people feel like they matter, and sometimes that feeling alone can begin someone else's healing. One of the most impactful ways to inspire change is by embracing your full story. The pain, the doubts, the setbacks, not as shameful chapters but as evidence of strength. When people see someone who is not defined by their mistakes but transformed by them, it creates a new vision of what's possible. It reminds them that they too can rise, that they don't need a perfect past to build a powerful future. And in this way, your scars become someone else's survival guide. Your story becomes a bridge for others to cross over their own struggles. There is something deeply magnetic about a person who has found peace within themselves. They don't need validation, they don't chase attention, and they don't shrink to fit into places they've outgrown. They carry themselves with quiet confidence, not because they've never been broken, but because they've learned how to rebuild. And that kind of presence is contagious. It plants seeds in the hearts of others, seeds of courage, seeds of hope, seeds of belief. And sometimes those seeds grow into entire gardens of transformation in people you may never even know you've touched. Choosing to become the light is not about fame or recognition. It's about impact.
It's about living in such a way that your presence becomes a safe place, your words carry weight, and your integrity speaks even louder than your voice. It means showing up for others even when no one is watching. It means forgiving when it's hard, staying kind when it's easier to be cruel, and continuing to walk with faith even when the path is unclear. That is how legacies are built, not through noise but through light. As more people begin to rise, to heal, to grow, a ripple begins. One life affects another, one heart awakens another, and before long, entire communities begin to shift, not because someone came to save them, but because someone chose to be the example, to lead not from above, but from within, to walk in truth so that others could find the courage to walk in theirs. And in doing so, they become a living reminder that the power to change the world doesn't come from having everything, but from becoming someone who has found something deeper, purpose, faith, and light.